The midterm rental strategy is just another tool in your toolbox. We had to. The old playbook of buy 10 long-term rentals, quit your job, that doesn't work anymore. As much as I love the midterm rental strategy, it's not the end-all be-all. It's just another tool. I don't think everyone should be an entrepreneur.
I agree to that too. I used to think opposite.
Because there's people that are smarter than you who don't think that they can even enter the room. That's the issue. You have something that tells you and others, like, I belong in the room. I'm still gonna always be a traveler, but I am officially, I think your podcast will be the first to say it, I'm no longer nomadic in 3 weeks.
A lot of this stuff in the coaching space has changed a lot, especially over the last year.
Other coaching programs, when you get up to like 30,000 students in his program, he's not able to like drop what he's doing and analyze a deal with someone at 4 o'clock. My hope for the mentorship program is that when people join, I want my students to get wild results over revenue.
Welcome to the JV Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Vasquez. Are you interested in going to one of the biggest and baddest real estate investor conferences on the planet? Well, you're actually in luck because I'm holding the Midterm Rental Summit April 27th to the 29th in the beautiful city of San Diego. We're going to have over 800 qualified investors showing up to learn all about midterm rentals. If you're super interested in doing this, I suggest you should come because you're going to be learning from special people like Dan Martell, Case Morby, Amy Majuri, Fiona McIntyre, and many others. Oh, and don't let me forget Noble Crawford Government Contracts. This is going to be an event you're going to want to go to. Tickets are selling fast. We don't have many left. I'm going to leave the link for that down below. Please check it out. You're definitely going to want to be there if you want to build a successful midterm rental business. What is up, my friends? Welcome back to another episode of the JV Pod. I'm super freaking pumped because we have one of my good friends, Sarah Weaver, who is joining or has joined the podcast today. Did I just say podcast? What I meant to say is podcast. And we talked about a lot of things that aren't necessarily all about midterm rentals, although we did touch midterm rentals, but we talked about perspective, identity shifts. Sarah and I both have been through different phases in our lives where we completely changed careers and changed ideas and how we thought about things and how we're actually looking inward a lot of the times when we're building our businesses. We talked about the coaching business, how it's changed and evolved, and how what I coin now the modern investor who's actually getting involved in real estate. Those are folks that are looking at, short-term rentals, midterm rentals, and even sober living facilities, residential care facilities. We talked about the rise of those types of investors that are getting involved in real estate. We also talk about what makes a person really dive into a program and allows them to be successful. Because I know a lot of folks come into programs and they don't always do what they say they're going to do. They're not always showing up in the way that they want to show up. We talk about why that is. So if you're interested in learning how to continue to build self-development with yourself and how you can shift your identity when you feel like you need to, we talk about all those things today in this podcast, which again, I think you guys are going to love this podcast. There is a ton of information that I do find to be valuable for myself, and I definitely think it's going to be valuable for you guys out there. Check it out. We're jumping right into it. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the JV Pod. I'm super freaking pumped because one of my good friends, Sarah Weaver, is hanging out with us today. And she's somebody that I didn't really know much about. Like, I didn't know a lot of people, Sarah, in midterm rentals back in, 2020-ish, somewhere right around there, 2021 maybe. And I saw Sarah was writing a book with Bigger Pockets, and I was super excited, and we got to connect back in probably 2021, somewhere right around there. Yeah, you and I have connected, and you've been at the Midterm Rental Summit. We've chatted. I've been in your group. I think you've came into my group a few times, and I feel like we've created this a relationship where we might not see each other or talk all the time, but when we jump back in, it feels like we just left off on conversation. But introduce yourself, Sarah. For those of you that don't know Sarah, which I'm pretty sure most of the folks that are watching this or listening to this do. But introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll talk about some stuff that's happening IRL. Look at that, me getting out there with the. Is that a childish term, or is that like a teen term?
I'm not going to pretend that I understand the Gen Zs out there. So.
I'm with you on that. Tell us about yourself, Sarah.
Yeah. So, hey, everyone. I'm Sarah Weaver. I am a real estate investor and entrepreneur and published author, as Jesse mentioned. And really, I'm just on a mission to build a really cool life. So for me, cool has been being fully nomadic and building my businesses. I have multiple businesses as well as owning rental properties all from afar. So I love people like you, Jesse, who are living in California but want to invest out of state. I've helped people, live the nomadic life, travel abroad, and then continue to buy back in the US. Because that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years. Actually, this week, I don't know when the podcast will or when the YouTube will air, but this week is actually my 6th-year anniversary of being fully nomadic.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
6 years.
So when you say nomadic, for people who don't really understand that, because I think that, how you live is a very small percentage of how most people live. I actually think it's really cool that you have the ability to do that. What is nomad? Like, what does that actually mean to live nomadic?
Yeah, so fully nomadic is that I don't have a mortgage or a lease or anything that I live in. Obviously, as a real estate investor, it's kind of funny talking about it that way because I have 9 mortgages because I own 9 buildings, 20 units now. But I don't live in any of them. And so any rental property or any property that I own is fully rented out. I actually tried to never stay in my units. I always joke like I'm such a good investor that I can't ever stay in my units because they're always full, which isn't exactly true. Of course, I do have some vacancies here and there, but I really define being fully nomadic as having the ability to travel where I want, when I want, with whom I want. And so that has looked different every year. The first year, I spent a good amount of time in Argentina and Brazil, living out of Airbnbs. It then transitioned into spending almost every summer in Europe, usually hotels, Airbnbs, hostels. Then as my community grew, I now am so lucky. Like last year, I lived in Southern California for almost a month, staying at a client turned friend's house. The nice thing about Jesse, about having real estate investors as our friends, is that they own a lot of property. And so we can go stay at our friends' places. And and that's kind of sums up, I guess. Is that clear enough? Or do you think there's something I missed with the whole, because you're right, nomadic it's really different.
Yeah, I think for me, like I always wanted to do something like that. I'm obviously have kids and stuff, and I know a lot of people that have kids now still live that way. I just wanted to try to have a little bit of stability for my kids because that's what I had growing up, was like parents that were super present, and we didn't really. I mean, we did go places, but we didn't like travel very far and do all these things. Which I'm getting to the age now where I'm just like, I want to see the world.
Mm-hmm.
We've already been there, done that, and I want to see it where like my body doesn't hurt. I just jacked up my back, Sarah, probably like probably about maybe 3 weeks ago. I haven't been able to work out, and that's like one of the most difficult feelings on the planet Earth. And you've had that because you had a elbow issue.
I broke every bone in my left arm 2 years ago.
2 years ago. I remember that, and I'm just like,
it was terrible.
God forbid this for anybody, but if there's ever a point in your life where you do something regularly and you don't have the ability to do it again, it's super humbling. But then you also realize like how important like movement is to your life. Like for me, exercising every day was like if I didn't exercise, I felt sick. Like I literally didn't feel like I was, and I got to a point where that happened, and it just sucks to get that. And I remember you had that issue with your shoulder. But nomadic lives are, you just see my ADHD just popped in right now. I don't know where that came from. Have you seen that episode with Theo Vaughn where he's like, or that little clip where he's like talking about something, all of a sudden he's like, how far do people see? And like Pauly Shore's sitting there with him. And he's like, Pauly Shore's like looking around like, what the hell are you even talking about? That's exactly what just happened right now. But the nomadic lifestyle, I mean, to be honest with you, I was always jealous of people that had the ability to just kind of go everywhere because I didn't have that, right? We always want what we don't have. But I do find, and this is where you just mentioned to me offline, that you're getting back to normalcy to some degree, which normal to you was going to different areas. And now you're coming back to what most people consider normal. What changed in your life, or what made that happen? Or what did you decide like, okay, this is it? And was traveling your identity?
Yeah, absolutely. Nomadic was actually in my Instagram bio when I attended Maui Mastermind back in 2021. And Brandon Turner and we got to talking about it. And he said, I don't think that's serving you. I was telling him at the time, like, I value community. Why I love to travel is connections and community. And I'm building a community similar to you. I have a community of real estate investors that I serve. And then I also have invested adventures where I take these real estate investors on adventures, which then builds like a community, of course, after the event. After you hike Kilimanjaro with 7 people, those 7 people become like your ride or die, right? And so community is so important to me. But the reality is that my community is in 11 different countries, probably 40 different states. And so I don't have like the Tuesday after work when I need to go run to Target or whatever that looks like in a different country. I don't really have, speaking of like ride or die, I don't have like my ride or die that I can like do the mundane stuff with. I have more than enough people like, hey, anyone want to go to Greece? Like at the drop of a hat? Yep, I got a friend for that. Anybody want to train to hike the W Trek in Patagonia? Yep, I got a friend for that. But the simple little stuff, like for you, I'm sure like attending your kids' sporting event or possibly like teaching one of your kids to skate, which I know is important to you. Like those little moments, let alone like belly laugh, giggle, hear it from across the room, kind of laugh on a couch on a afternoon. Like I just don't have that. And I'm ready for that.
Yeah. Do you feel like in some weird way you were trying to like distance yourself from actually having that to some degree, almost like a self-sabotage? I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have that degree in some weird way.
It's really interesting. I've thought about this a lot. Like you meet a lot of travelers who are traveling because of divorce, heartbreak, lost a job. And I can honestly say that wasn't me. I was traveling because I was obsessed. Like I was addicted. And then this cool thing happened. I think I alluded to it where I grew a community of other digital nomads. So then my invitations got cooler as time went on, and then sprinkle in real estate investors who have disposable income. And next thing I knew, I was getting like the sickest invites like, hey, meet me in Paris to go to the Olympics. Okay. Hey, come to London to see Taylor Swift. Okay. And so I was at a place in my life where I just kept getting these amazing invitations. And I hope that the audience can tell like my excitement because like I am not jaded at all. I feel like I'm a world traveler that like is still so excited. Like I have childlike wonder when I see a waterfall. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Even though I've seen thousands of waterfalls now, right? And then even, for example, I was at the Met this weekend in New York City, celebrating my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. There was a painting of Tivoli in Italy. And I was like, oh my God, I was just there last summer. Da, 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 da. And then we turn and there's something else. And I was like, oh, I visited that in 2010. And the person that I was with, I like laughed every time because he's like, wow, you're like actually this excited. I'm like, yeah, like this is so cool that I get to live this life. And it doesn't pass me by that this isn't going to be forever either. And so I'm enjoying this chapter so much, knowing that it does have an expiration date.
Yeah. And you know, what's crazy too, is, going back to like, I think you're self-aware enough to know, like, I'm not leaving this to get away from, whatever normalcy, like you said, that you actually enjoyed it. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included on that, dove into work because I didn't want to deal with actually having to deal with myself, deal with issues that I've had as a kid or, deal with certain relationship issues and things of that nature. So like I would force myself into work, not even force, but like just lose myself in that. And I think everybody does that to a certain degree. And I've noticed that a lot of, especially high performing not W2, but entrepreneurs have that like innate drive where they're like just so into something that they're kind of like forgetting about themselves in a weird way.
Well, I think it's easier to do something we're really good at. And so I think what you're alluding to is it's easy for you and I to record another podcast, write another email newsletter, or better yet, delegate to our team to do these things. Then maybe have a tough conversation with our significant other. Or like you mentioned that you love working out. Well, I hate working out. So for me, that's something that I avoid, even though I know I need it.
Except you're going hiking on these crazy freaking mountains.
I do a lot of hiking. Yeah,
so that's pretty much working out. I mean, I've hiked before and it is not like that right there is like, I don't like doing it. It's beautiful to look at, but like, on a freaking grade of a hill like this, I'm just like, dude, what am I doing?
Okay, well, I'll let you in on a little secret. I don't think I like hiking either. Like every time I plan one of these like badass hiking trips, like day 2 of the trip, I'm like, do I even like hiking? Like, what am I doing?
Like, what am I doing? Yeah, I feel like that as well. But it is cool to be in nature and like to really, and it's something I've really evolved a lot more into recently over the last probably year where I was a city kid. Like I love cities. I love culture. Like I love being in these big cities, but now I'm really like kind of finding myself. And California is cool where I live because I'm an hour from some San Francisco. I'm 2 hours away from Santa Cruz. I'm an hour from Pinecrest and big trees. So I'm like right in the middle of like all these really cool places. And I just discovered like San Francisco has a place called Mill Valley. There's like all kinds of, have you been to Mill Valley before, Sarah?
I have, yep.
Super freaking awesome. It's like this little quaint town that reminds me of like a 1970s like horror movie. It's just like this really beautiful place, but it just has like this kind of like, has this fun energy. Then you go to like Big Sur, which I was just there, a beautiful, beautiful place. And then I have a property in Aptos, and I didn't realize that there's like hikes there's like a forest like 5 minutes from my house. Like literally, Sarah, like a
Whoa.
forest with no service and like
Add that to the house. Add that to the house manual.
Exactly. And I'm just like, man, I live in such a cool place, but I'm glad to get back outside and I'm glad to kind of get back into the world in that way. And I have this like burning desire of traveling. In fact, that's what this year is supposed to be for me. It's like, I hate getting in planes. I hate flying, Sarah. Like I would rather do anything rather than fly. Like the idea, and maybe you can walk me through this right now, sitting miles in the air with random ass people going freaking 500 miles an hour, like in a box. Like how is that even natural and normal? It's cool though, because you're you're literally freaking flying across the world and time traveling, but I just freaking hate it. Like I do.
Yeah, you got to change your mindset on it. And so you got to tell yourself like, okay, sure, you might hate the idea of that part, but then do you love the idea of like, hey, I can go, like, let's use this example. I just went to the Met in New York City. Like I just got to see like things that are thousands and thousands of years old with my own eyes because I was willing to get in the plane.
Yeah.
And so think about, I mean, what do they say? Like, think about, the destination rather than the journey. Because sometimes the journey, especially when we're talking about working out, it's like, oh, wow. But I'm excited for the destination. And so I think that's what you got to do with flying. And then I think it's so cool. Like I always love to like look around the plane and be like, okay, what's that person's story? And then you and I both were so reachable because we not only are entrepreneurs, we have employees who report to us. We have guests who stay in our properties. And then we also have students, Instagram followers, YouTube followers. So we are so accessible all the time. People always need something from me. I love a plane ride because I do not buy the internet. Yeah. I tell my team I'm going to be unavailable. Here's my flight number, track my flight. I will be unavailable for that time. And so for me, flying is my thinking time. And so for other people, it might not be flying. It might be hiking as we're talking about that, or getting into nature. Or I have a friend that's a really big runner. So for him, it's running. But for me, my thinking time happens on a plane. I actually wrote most of 30-day stay from planes.
No freaking way. I didn't know that.
And so now I allow myself this thinking time because also what you're kind of alluding to, I think as an entrepreneur, we're constantly doing. And I don't know about you, but I had to really learn, probably 2024 was when I really took the time to say, okay, who is Sarah? Because I would have answered it as I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an investor, I'm a international speaker now, thanks to amazing conferences like yours. And I do all of these things. And that my therapist was like, exactly, you do those things. Like, that's not who Sarah is. And so really figuring out like, who is Jessie, I think is something us entrepreneurs really need to answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up therapy right now, because I think that is such a powerful piece of learning, understanding yourself. I've talked about this before where, a lot of us will take up I always want to learn new things. Like I want to learn, I play drums. Like I just got a drum set for me and my son again. We're like starting to play drums again. And
cool.
I always love learning new things. But like with therapy, I think what's really cool about it is that you get to actually like learn about yourself rather than these other things that were like, you and I connect with so many different people. We learn a hell of a lot about those people. We'll asking them questions. What do you do? What do you want to do? What's your goals? What's your blah, blah. a lot of times we don't actually ask ourselves those kinds of things. So I think it's really cool that, with therapy, you get to kind of have that inward lens and you get to talk to somebody about, perspective, and you get it from a different way. And these folks are trained to see, patterns and things and ask you the questions that are, give you insight. And I think I've always been such a big fan of therapy. I've been in therapy for years and years and years and years. And I find it still to be so powerful in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of times, I think every entrepreneur needs therapy, to be honest with you, because there's so many different layers of what you just said right now. And like for me, I can't turn myself off like you do, like getting on a plane saying, hey guys, I'm unavailable. Like I can't do that. And let me tell you why. And this is something I talked to my therapist about. When I worked in healthcare, for 17 years up until 2020, there was this case manager. So Sarah, I used to have to go in these hospitals and I'd have to, like, let's say you're a case manager that works in a hospital. Your job is to discharge patients that need like oxygen or need nurses or stuff like that. My goal was to become your friend and have you send me referrals or my company referrals and not the other 400 reps that are doing the exact same thing that I was doing. And I remember going into this hospital. It's called Emmanuel Hospital. It's in Turlock. I was going in there all the time, Sarah. And there's this woman that was in there. Her name was Liz. And for 6 months, I went in there weekly and just said, hey, Liz, how you doing? I look at the pictures on her wall. She'd have a picture of her kids. And I'd be like, oh, your kid plays baseball. Like, I'm a big Giants fan too. One Saturday morning, it was 9 a.m. in the morning, 9:01. I remember exactly what happened. My phone rang and it said EMC on my phone, which is Emmanuel Medical Center. I pick up the phone and Liz is like, hey, Jesse, I have a patient for you. They're getting ready to leave in the next 20 minutes. And I just called Richard from another, like she mentioned the company. It's called Life Care Solutions. He didn't answer. He actually told me he's mowing the lawn right now and he couldn't get out here and he'd call me back in 20 minutes. He was like the number one guy that entire hospital used. And I was like, yeah, sure. And she's like, but this patient needs a walker. Are you able to get a walker over here? And I'm like, so they need to have home health. They need a nurse and a therapist to go. I have to go meet them. I got to get their information and I got to take them a walker, which normally I would call another company to go do, but they would take hours to get it. So I went to Goodwill, bought a walker that was used, took it to the hospital. And what happened is, like, I realized that if I was available for people, that they would send me referrals. So like, that's how I started to build my business. That one dude happened to not pick up the phone, said he was mowing his lawn. He'd call them back and they called me. So like, I've always had this, like, in order for me to be successful, I need to be available all the time. So that's like another thing that I'm learning this year. Maybe you can give me some tidbits on this because it's been so hard for me to turn off.
Well, let's think about that. Like, okay, so that was Jesse in that moment. But who's to say that we don't actually want to be Richard? Like, because I think some entrepreneurs are going to hear that story and think like, oh, Richard doesn't have enough grit. He didn't want it enough.
You wanted to mow his lawn at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Yeah.
But you also said, yeah, that sounds like he needs to hire some lawn care. But maybe that is his thinking time. He loves the smell of, freshly cut grass. That's his one time to be outside, get vitamin D, a little bit of exercise if it's not an easy push mower. And maybe he's also really particular and he has to have the lines a certain way and no landscaper can do it like Richard, right? Yeah. So let's say that aside, let's say he was doing some other activity. You also said Richard was number one at that hospital.
Yeah.
So my first reaction is, okay, that's great for Jesse, who was in a building phase, hungry, driven, will do whatever it takes for the company he works for. So I want 100 Jessies who work for me, but I want to be Richard. Yeah. I want to be so successful that people work on my schedule. I don't want to provide bad service. I don't think Richard, unless Liz and Richard had, something prearranged and he's dropping the ball, then that's a different story. But if Liz simply called him for an opportunity and Richard's like, you know what, I'm going to call you back on my time. I'm not available right in this instant. I kind of want to be Richard. That's kind of the business that I'm building, which is, I think, why I was able last year, 2024, I flew 85 times.
Jeez Louise. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's over. I think I went around the world. I'll pull it up all. And it was unbelievable how many hours. I want to say it was like 10 days spent in a plane. I have this cool app that has it tracked. So let's see. So I went around the world 4.6 times.
Holy smokes.
And as flight time, I spent 11 days and 10 hours in the air.
That's kind of cool though.
in the air.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was 49 airports, 13 airlines, and 85 flights.
Jeez.
And that doesn't include actually, so technically it's 86 because this app wouldn't let me track. I did take one chartered flight from Antarctica to Argentina.
Oh,
So
that didn't count in there.
that's
Yeah.
not counted in there. So 86 flights. And so you have to ask yourself, like, do you want to be in that story? Do you want to be Jesse or do you want to be Richard? What kind of entrepreneur do you want to be?
Hey everyone, if you are feeling stuck or not like you're making the progress you want in your midterm rental journey, I've got something that can change everything for you. Imagine being part of a community that's not only supportive, but filled with like-minded individuals who are driven to succeed just like you. Whether you are just starting out, looking to take care of your business to another level, my community is designed to help you break through those barriers. We're currently opening up registration for new enrollees, so if you're serious about building a thriving midterm rental business, and you want to leverage my 10,000 hours of experience, this is your chance. Don't miss out on the opportunity to learn, grow, and connect with others in the same path. I hope to see you guys. The link is in the show notes, and let's build something incredible together. Let's get back to this episode. Yeah, I think that the way my brain is wired, it's so service-based. And this is something that for years in my life, because of that job being available, like we kicked Richard out. Like Richard was no longer the guy anymore. I was the guy. Another quick story. That same woman, Liz, Sarah, probably a month later, I was in Los Angeles with my family. We were on It's a Small World. Have you been on It's a Small World?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Guess what goes off? My phone starts ringing. EMC. I pick up the phone. I'm taking notes. And Liz is like, are you on It's a Small World right now? Because it's like the most recognizable song on the planet. It plays in multiple different languages. Like if you hear it, you know, like, oh, that's a Small World if you've been on it. And I was like, yeah, I'm actually going through it right now. She's like, oh my God, I've never talked to anybody that has answered a phone while they're on a Disneyland ride. And I'm relaying this information. I'm talking to her. And I think for me, they started to realize that I'm so available that now they're going to be able to, like, they can count on me. So I've always had that mindset when it comes to business and work and just like, you know, I didn't graduate high school. So for me to even get a job, I was a delivery driver. And then I ended up becoming a sales rep after years of doing that. And it's like I climbed this corporate ladder and then got all these different jobs and ended up making, you know, a couple $100,000 a year, which is pretty freaking amazing. So it's like that hustle is in me. It's burned into me. And it's been something that I've been trying to let go, which I have a lot. Like I have a team now, like you do. And having a team is like the greatest thing on the planet because you're able to delegate a lot of stuff. But still that accessibility to me is so there, Sarah. Like I've been trying to rack my brain on how to turn it off. But also, I think what you just said earlier is really important. That if somebody's new coming into the game, that old Jesse is like that's what you need when you're first starting off. Like you have to have that. I had a lot of time. I needed to invest that time into connecting with people. I was going into that office for 6 months, Sarah, before they called me. So I was like, I felt like I had to do it, and that kind of like just work ethic and being there and just showing up and like that was burned into me because of like, you know, these hospitals that I was going into. We're competing with 300 other people that do the exact same thing that I did. And, but yeah, I think now I'm in a phase of my life where, you know, I'm trying to like get back more of my time, you know, get back more of, you know, being able to turn my phone off and not have, you know, that's why I like to go hiking now because there's no self-service there. So like I'll go and my phone just like it just turns SOS. Like it's literally what it does. But then did you know if you get a cell phone, you can like move it around in the sky and it'll allow you to send a text? Did you know that?
Yeah.
So like one day
you're that guy.
Dude, I was that guy, Sarah. Like I was out there like, oh my God, I forgot to do this. I got to make sure Fee has it. Trying to find the earth, like or in the right satellite position, like facing the sun. And I sat there for a minute. I was like, what the flip am I doing? Like I'm in this beautiful area right now with trees everywhere. There's no way I can even find a patch of sunlight because I'm in like literally a jungle of trees. And I just got to let it go. So I'm coming more to terms with that. And I do envy folks that have that mindset, but I think there's a balance that comes in. I think you have to have that tenure and time where you start to hustle and then you get to that point where, you know, you let it go. And that's something for me that I've always, you know, have tried to turn off. And now it's like really like apparent to me, you know, I'm 42 now. Like, do I want to keep busting my ass as much as I have been the last 4 years? Like these last 4 years, Sarah, have been hard. Like they're hard. Last year, hard. Like, you know, for coaching business, it went down. Like it went down a lot. Like our financial stuff went down a lot. Our bookings that we had last year dropped by 22%. So like we're seeing these shifts and these changes and things that happen, the way that people are using money. And it's like, this is my first time owning businesses, like obviously I've owned my own business since 2015, but you have to adapt and change, and just what I was then to what I am now, it's so different, but there's still these key elements that I feel like we have to shift. And I think it's a cool thing now that you're coming to terms with your identity as the former, and now you have a ladder, right? There's a new person that you're becoming. And I think there's something really cool about that, because you went through, and I always call this seasons. Like people will go through seasons of like the hustling part. Like that hustle season for me was like freaking 15 years, right? It's like just a lot of years. And then that was done. And then I got into another hustle era, which is like me doing my own business. But now I feel like I'm getting into this other space where I'm wanting to go more inward, just like you are, understanding who I am, what my goals are, and they've changed similar to what yours have been. And I also think that what you're going through right now, and a lot of people will go through at a certain point in their life. So I was 38 when I went through my identity shift from like I was a sales rep to like I'm going to quit that job and to do something new. You had to do all the experiences and have all those things like to become this person now that's able to shed that old person. And you're still going to have it. You're still going to do those things.
I'm still going to always be a traveler, but I am officially, I think your podcast will be the first to say it. I am officially like, I'm no longer nomadic in 3 weeks. I am moving into a house that I have completely designed from the ground up. I'm really excited. And it's in Prairie Village, Kansas. So I quite literally have said out loud, I will never move back home. Well, be careful what you say. Because I was explaining to someone that it wasn't like one moment that led to this, but it was kind of like, have you seen the movie Forrest Gump?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the scene where Forrest is like running and he's like starting to grow that beard? Yeah. And for some reason, like people start following him and they're actually running with him. And then he's on that road in Utah. I think it's in like Monument Valley. And he's just like, okay,
he stops.
I'm done. And he just stops. I need to look up what he says because I've used this reference a few times. But he and he just stops and he turns around. He says, I'm going home. And so for me, there was a day in October that I was just like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm so happy. Like nothing dramatic has happened. There's not even like any sad part to the story. Yeah. I just am done. And I'm so excited. I've been like, this morning I was researching what Vitamix blender I should buy. and I'm covered. You can't see, but my bottom half, I'm covered in like sawdust and some sheetrock because I just went and checked on the house and walked through with my general contractor to talk about some of the finishing touches. And I'm excited. I'm excited for this next chapter. And there's some things that I want business-wise that I know being in one place will help.
Yeah.
Like right now, it's hard for my team to schedule anything. I think I've even rescheduled this podcast with you like at least once, if not twice, which I hate that. Like that's not the type of person that I want to be. Definitely not the businesswoman I want to be. I don't like flakiness. I think it's disrespectful. And so I want to find a way where I'm more available on my own terms. So a little bit of Richard still. I'll answer, but I'll say, hey, I can't talk right now. And then personally, I want to build community. And I have friends and family here. They're all taking bets on how long I'm going to last. I think they're like, she's going to live here for like a year and then she's gone. And maybe that is it. Like nothing is forever. And then health and fitness. There's just so many things you can't do when you're living out of hotels.
Yeah.
Like it is so hard to have routine. Thankfully, I had significant weight loss at the end of 2023 and I kept the weight off while being nomadic. But I didn't lose like an extra 5 pounds at all. And I still have a long way to go. And so I'm so excited to have routine and lose the rest of the weight and just like be my healthiest, happiest self.
Yeah. So you're going inward and just like, I'm taking care of the pillars, which is like health, my relationships, my friends, like my family, my community, and really going deep on that. I want to talk about your house real quick because I live in the house that I've owned for I don't even know how many years now, like 9. It's a really small house. But I've been thinking about this a lot, like being somewhere, because you work from home. You've been working nomadic, so you've been all over the place. But there's something about being in a space that inspires you, which is like right now I'm in, this used to be a family room, and right across like this little room or this little sliding barn door is the kitchen and the living room of my house because it's a small house, but I converted this. What's it like to build something like of your own? Because you did it from scratch.
So I bought it's a small house. So here's the numbers for the real estate investors. So it's in Prairie Village, Kansas, which is like a class A neighborhood. It's the best public high school that feeds in from this neighborhood. And what's happening is they're tearing these like 1940 to 1960, mostly Cape Cods. They're tearing them down and then building new builds on like almost every square inch of the lot. Wow. So they're maybe tearing down like a 900 square foot or a 1,300 square foot home and building like a 4,200 square foot home.
Wow.
And those homes, the new builds, are selling for 1.1 to 2.3 million.
Wow.
And so I'm kind of thinking, I keep saying like 1.3 million. It's kind of like it's conservative. And so I own a house in this neighborhood from 2017 that I bought. I bought it as a 3-bed, 1.5 bath. At the time in 2017, 2018, I renovated it and made it 4-bedroom, 2-bath. I bought that house for $215,000.
Wow.
In 2017, that new build that I'm talking about across the street sold for $790,000. That same new build is now like 1.1, 1.3 million.
Holy smokes.
And so the lot itself is like worth a lot.
So you're tearing that house down, or are you like?
So that house is I still own it. My PITI, principal, interest, tax, and insurance, my monthly payment is $1,520, and I rent that out long term for $3,100.
Wow.
So that was my first rental property.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that first one went well, because I don't know if all this other, rentals that I'd own would have happened.
Yeah.
So then fast forward to 2024, and I wanted to own another house in this neighborhood with the idea that I would own it, live in it, turn it into a midterm rental, and then in 7 years, tear it down and build one of the new builds. I don't want to do the new build yet because I don't need to. Like if I can cash flow, even break even for a few years, let's let these things continue to appreciate. And see how many I can buy is the other thing. That's one of the many reasons that I chose Kansas City is I think being boots on the ground, I do plan on buying. All I wrote in my goals was a shit ton of real estate. I haven't put a number to it. But I want to buy more rentals here in Kansas City. And that could be 1 a year or 2 a year. I don't know. But,
do you think of yourself as, I had somebody ask me this the other day, and I'm curious to see what your thoughts on this. Do you think you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur, or both? I
think both. I think if you are a good real estate investor, you are an entrepreneur. So even our W-2 client, like our clients who have, high income earner W-2, maybe they're even like a very established career, whatever that might mean. If they're a real estate investor, I think they also own a business if they're doing it right. And so I definitely feel more aligned with other entrepreneurs. I find that the people that I gravitate toward, on a mastermind and even socially, are all entrepreneurs, not even necessarily in the real estate space. Right. So I definitely think I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah. So when I had an opportunity to buy another house in the same neighborhood, I bought what's considered very small. I don't know, in California standards, if 886 square feet is small, but in Kansas, that's tiny. People are like, oh, so it's just a little 2-bed, 1-bath. Mm-hmm. And I bought it for $265, owner occupied. I'm renovating it. I don't know how much I'm putting into it yet, if I'm being honest. I'm going a little over budget because here's what I'm telling myself is I'm making it a little bit nicer than I probably should, because I really want to love living in it.
Yes.
Because I think transitioning from being fully nomadic to living in one place, let alone living in Kansas, I mean, no offense to Kansas, I think it's going to be really hard. Check in on me in about 4 months, because I might be having a freak out. And so I have renovated the house a little bit better than I would if it was a true rental. But that's kind of the point. For the first time ever, this is my primary. This is my house. And so I'm moving in. I plan to live on it as long as I can. And I am making the sickest office. It's a really cool home office. Actually, just today, I got a 82-inch slider for the back of the house because there was no way to like go into the backyard. So that'll be in my office. So I'll have a ton of natural light.
I love that.
And then the kitchen, this is crazy. The kitchen island is 14 and a half feet long.
What?
And so the house is tiny. The house is basically all kitchen. And so I'll send some pictures so that we can put them in the show notes. And like at least of like I have the architectural design and stuff. Cause yeah, the house is mostly kitchen. And yeah, there's no dining room. There's no dining table. Even that's why I wanted the island to be
you don't need one.
So people can sit at it. Also, it's just me. And yeah, I'm really excited. And then the investor in me is, yeah, I bought this because even as an MTR, it will cash flow pennies, but it'll cash flow if I decide to move out. And then I'm going to hold on to it and let it appreciate, obviously have principal pay down. And then eventually I'll tear it down and I'll build one of those new builds and profit. I don't know, conservatively, we'll say 200,000, but probably closer to $500,000.
That's freaking wild. I think you should go all out on the furnishings and getting stuff that you love. And like I mentioned before, like there's just something about being in a place that you, especially, I'm just trying to think from your perspective, going all over the place. Now you're like in a place that you love, that you feel comfortable with, that you're going to want to be there. Because I think it's pretty damn cold in Kansas. So you're probably going to be inside. You're probably going to be inside sometimes. If you last through the winter, which I have a feeling you're going to be there for a while, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I feel really good about it.
Yeah, I feel like you're going to be there for a while. Are you seeing right now, Sarah? Like this is something I've been noticing a lot too. With I'm going to get into the investor talk a little bit. I've been talking about this for quite a bit now. But I see this new investor coming into real estate, and you go to a lot of seminars and you see stuff. And I've been kind of coining this phrase of the modern investor, where they're coming in looking at actually creating businesses out of their tangible real estate, or creating a business that's not property management. 'Cause, that's old school, like where people create a property management company. But there's these investors now that are coming in, like turning in residential homes into residential care facilities, creating a business out of it. Like the midterm stuff, what I do with the corporate stuff, we're creating a business on top of the real estate. And then you have people that are doing sober living that are turning those, properties into businesses. And I've just watched kind of this like morph of these investors that have changed the way they think, and they're doing short-term rentals too, but they're not just looking at traditional long-term rentals anymore. Because I think, unless you're buying in Kansas or some of these places, it's hard to even get the 1%. Like I can't get 1% the 1% rule in California. Like I just can't, even in buying in, Modesto or Turlock or random little small cities, like we still can't do that. So a lot of these people are kind of, I'm saying not being forced, but they're just taking this entrepreneurship and they're actually bringing it into real estate, which, I've been doing this for a while, and I've just noticed this shift. And maybe you have too, like going to the summit and stuff like that. But I just see so many investors now coming in where they're creating a different way, or it's not necessarily different, but it's becoming more of a mainstream.
Well, here's what I always say. And I even say this about our, the strategy that you and I both love and why people even, follow us is the midterm rental strategy. It's just another tool in your toolbox. And so I would say the same thing about maybe not sober living and like these, supported living, sober living. And then I don't know what what do we even call the like residential home cares?
Residential care facilities. Yeah.
Residential care. I think those are full on businesses, yet they too are tools in your toolbox. Yeah. And what happened with raising home prices, raising insurance prices, and higher interest rates is we had to put other tools in our toolbox. The old playbook of buy 10 long-term rentals, quit your job, that doesn't work anymore. And so that's why I became so passionate about midterm rentals about 6 years ago, is because I knew that it would just be another tool in my toolbox. Right now, 60% of my portfolio is furnished and running as a midterm rental. That still means 40% of my portfolio is long-term. So as much as I love the midterm rental strategy, it's not the end all be all. It's just another tool. And so I think that real estate investors need to find other ways to put tools in their toolbox. And so I don't think that everyone should do all of the strategies that you just mentioned, because a lot of them are jobs, like a JOB. Right. And I got into real estate to not have a JOB so that I can be flying around, on airplane mode, ideally on airplanes. But I think that a good investor, as I mentioned, will see themselves as an entrepreneur. They will educate themselves as an entrepreneur as well as a real estate investor. And then they'll take one or maybe 4 of these tools and put them in their toolbox. It's also a phrase that I wanted to use when we were talking about therapy. Like, what I love about therapy, or really any type of self-help, self-development, really anything that you and I are involved in when it comes to listening to podcasts, being guests on podcasts, attending conferences, we're just continually putting more tools in my toolbox.
Right.
Do I think that therapy is like the wave a magic wand solution? No, but the hope is that you're getting tools, whether it be from self-reflection or actual like communication skills, so that when the event arises later, you either act or react better than you did in the past. And so again, I just go back to like, let's put as many tools in our toolbox as we can.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I think that makes complete sense. And you're totally right about the rates going up and people having to get creative. And I think that right now, I think we're living in this like, really cool modern era of, how investors are looking at real estate. And I think it's awesome when I go and see somebody and they're like, yeah, I just started a residential care facility, 2 years ago, and we have 5 now, and we're doing, this crazy amount of money. Like these they're cash only businesses. Or like, you have students that are probably killing it. I have students that are doing like 6 figures a month, which is freaking wild, without even owning property, and they're just connecting people to each other. And it's cool to watch. It's cool to kind of see those things happen. And I love the transformation of humans. And what you just said right now is important. Like the way somebody will react. People get triggered with certain things. I know that I sure as hell have, but you get to watch people change the way they thought about something and start to really live what they say they're going to do. And then they start to actually become the person, and what's triggered them in the past might not necessarily trigger them now. Or, you just get to watch these people blossom. And I think that's such a cool thing about doing what you and I both do. And I'm getting excited talking about this because, I just love the transformation of people. Like whether doesn't matter if it's weight loss or it's like I just love, I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it, because like, I just love when people become more than what they think they are.
Yeah. And I think that happens. Correct me tell me if you don't agree, but I think that you become a better version of yourself, of course, through self-development. But I think the best way to have improvement in yourself is through community.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree to that. And I also think entrepreneurship is one of the greatest self-development tools on the planet. Like if you dive in, that's why I said, I feel like every entrepreneur needs therapy, because it's going to force you to think about things you never thought about before. There's times where I didn't have enough money to cover my payroll, like just stuff like that. You have to figure things out. And it's like,
but I don't think everyone should be an entrepreneur.
I agree to that too. I used to think opposite. Like, my wife used to get pissed off at me because I'd be like, everybody could do what I do. And she's just like, not everybody could do what you do. And I'm like, yes, they can. Like, I don't have anything. Like, I didn't even graduate high school. I'm not the smartest. Actually, I'm like probably the dumbest person in every room that I go into. But she's like, not everybody can do what you do. And
because there's people that are smarter than you who don't think that they can even enter the room. That's the issue. Like I said, if I could learn how to bottle up confidence and sell it, I'd be a billionaire. And so I think that's like, among other things, Jesse, you have a confidence that really can't be taught. So whether you are the smartest or not smartest also depends on how you view, is that academic smarts? Is that street smarts? Like you have something that tells you and others, like, I belong in the room. Whereas unfortunately, what I've seen through what I do with my coaching is a lot of people lack the confidence to even think about going in the room, let alone like actually opening the door and walking over the threshold.
See, Sarah, that's a great first off compliment. Thank you. I'm going to take it. And second off, how do we get people to start to get confidence? I think that's like the age-long question of like, how do, and I've seen this before. We have somebody come into a class and they're just like, oh, they're not going to probably do very well because they're way too timid. They're not they're not turning on their freaking screen when we're on a Zoom call. Like,
yeah.
Small things like that will make me realize, like, okay, this person's probably not involved as they want to be. But like,
they don't have it. I can tell when a student has it. What I think it is it all goes back to fear. So figuring out why that person is fearful. So let's say that we have someone come to us and they say, I want to buy my first rental. Well, great, because I hate convincing people that they should be in real estate. So I only want to work with people who already raise their hand and say, hey, I want to buy real estate. So they come to you or and they say, I want to buy my next rental. And they might not say it, but they'll say, I'm scared, right? Sometimes it's lack of education. Like they actually don't know what's a DTI, what's DTI, what are my lending options? How do I analyze a market? How do I analyze a deal? Great. That's where Jesse and I come in. We could teach you that. Watch a free YouTube video, listen to a podcast, read a book, or sit down one-on-one with us and we'll help you, right? So that's an education piece. Then you have the person that's read all the books, they've listened to all the podcasts, they sound like they've invested because they know so much about, all the lingo and all the different tools out there. But they're scared. And so what are they scared of? Are they scared that they're going to buy a bad deal? Okay, then let's make sure you're really good at analyzing deals. And you have a mentor or somebody who will analyze deals like another layer of check, right?
Yeah.
Checks and balances. Then let's say that they're scared about being the landlord, like actually tenant management or guest management. You say, great, then maybe you need to partner with someone or just, again, learn the skills or have a co-host, whatever that might look like. And then you might actually find out that they're not the breadwinner, that they are maybe the homemaker or they just make less than their spouse, whatever it might be. And they're so scared of losing their spouse's money.
I've seen that.
Or they are the bread maker or the breadwinner, sorry. And they are so scared because their duty, man or woman, is to be a provider. And if this one deal goes badly, what would that mean for their family? So what I like to do is I like to go down that rabbit hole of like, okay, this bad thing's happened. What would you do? Can't find a tenant? Well, then I'd look for a tenant. Okay, I can't, let's say that, somebody trashes the unit, we get a lot of investors that are so scared about this mystical guest that's going to trash all the units, or a squatter. And it's like, great, then here are the steps I would take if that has happened, which I haven't had a squatter, but I have had someone trash my unit. And guess what? Not the end of the world, guys. Like, still standing, the building's still standing. I had, things in place to figure it out. And so what I do is I zero in on what's their actual fear and see if I can address it. And then slowly you can build confidence off of that.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think a lot of it's doing and then failing and doing and then failing and doing and then failing and then figuring it out. Like I always tell people, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like I still right now to this day, I mean, I know like certain things, but like if we talk about like, how do I continue to grow and get a bigger audience? I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. Is ads going to work? I don't know. I'm going to throw that's what my 2024 was, throwing all this money at the wall to see what would stick. And to be honest with you, 9 out of the 10 things didn't stick. Like,
what was the one thing that did work?
It's consistency, continuing to be consistent with my own like content, not paying for ads, not paying, like we ended up spending thousands of dollars, Sarah, like we had people that came in and taught us, how to do ads or started running Facebook ads. And like, we were getting more organic searches than we were when we had an ads team come in. And then, we paid for, somebody to come into our back end and just really streamline on the back end, which it actually ended up being okay with that, but completely derailed and messed up what we did before. So we had to go back and relearn how to do everything. And then that person left. So we had to like relearn how to do it all over again. So it was just like a lot of different mistakes. Even in my hosting business, like I knew that we had to have somebody boots on the ground, like 24/7, like that needed to go run to do things. So we have short-term rentals too. Didn't do that for a long time. I had to add a new person in there, which is expenses and all that stuff. So we threw a lot of money at the wall, money that we made in 2023, because 2023 was like the creme year. Like we just
made a lot of money.
yeah, like we did like 1.8 in 2023. 2024, we barely hit $1 million. And I'm saying barely because we almost did 2 million the year before. My goal for 2024 was to do 2 million. And we were $1 million short of that. And so like there's things that you're going to run into that are going to be different. But like now I know I have framework for this year of like, okay, here's what didn't work last year. We spent thousands of dollars doing that. What's traditionally worked? Just continuing to put out content, continuing to educate people. I got to go out and meet more people in person. I got to do what you're doing, going and shake more hands with more people in person. I think that's by far one of the greatest things that anybody could do is like being face to face with somebody.
Definitely. It saved my 2024. So like 2023, what I made just from coaching and let's call it speaking and all those things, I made the same amount of money in 2024, but I went from working 40 to 60 hours a week to working about 5 hours a week. The difference is that I was on the road more. So like those 5 hours of work was like either speaking at a conference or doing like conference dinners and all that kind of stuff. But then the time that I wasn't at a conference, I barely was on my computer.
No way.
And so it's interesting. Last year I went from, I was working about 5 hours. But I flew all those times. I think I spoke, I haven't tallied it up, but I think I spoke at 22 speaking events last
Holy
year.
smokes, that's a lot.
It was a lot. But I made the same amount of money and I worked significantly less hours. And so now this year I'm willing and able to work more hours, but I'm not willing and able to get on a plane as much. And so it'll be
Yeah.
really interesting. Like I feel like I will go more into YouTube and social media this year. But I think that I'm doing that because I published the book.
Yeah.
So I built credibility and an audience through the book.
Mhm.
Then last year I spoke and was at every conference you can imagine. So then again, I was shaking more hands. So now I'm hoping that I can be in one place in this, amazing home office that I'm building. And so I'll be really interested to see what my revenue looks like for this year.
Yeah, you know what I've noticed over the last, this is something I really that came to fruition for me, for all the entrepreneurs out there. Everything you're doing like 2 years ago comes like full circle now. So like I'm starting to see that now. Everything that I did from starting a summit in 2022 to like, doing a 2023 one, all that work is like now hitting me. It's like this delayed kind of like slow process where it's like, okay, now it's here. 2 years ago work is now here. It's like we can put all this stuff out, but you don't see it right now. Like I'm noticing that now. Even like if I do a webinar or whatever, like, we might get people that jump on and will join the program or whatever. But I'm talking about like on the greater scale of, like putting together conferences, going out and speaking to people, doing all these things. Like that's going to catch up in a certain amount of time. So I definitely feel like where you're going right now, the YouTube stuff and all that, continuing to put out content that way. I think that's it's kind of where I'm going to. It's like I want to have somebody that comes in with me, actually like hangs out with me for 2 days out of the week where we go through things and we create more content where it's like more little things. And I want to do more entrepreneurship rather than, midterm rental stuff. And that's the hard thing. Like there's another identity shift where it's like, this is who I am. I don't actually think of myself as a real estate investor. I think about myself more as an entrepreneur. And there's this path and like, but people are always going to know me as the midterm rental guy. People are always going to know you as a midterm rental gal. Like that's
well, and they're going to know me as nomadic. Like people now, when they call me, they don't say, "Hey, Sarah, how are you?" They say, "Hey, Sarah, where are you?" So that's going to be so interesting. And I will say, even a month ago, when I more or less I was well into the renovation of this house, I closed a month ago. Now I'm like well into the renovation. But a month ago, right before close, I was like, what am I doing? Like, is this a good idea? And it was like, don't worry. I mean, I'm an investor. So even if it's a bad idea and I hate living here, I can figure it out. But now as I'm getting closer and I have just custom made a couch, I have ordered the bed and some kitchen stuff. Now I'm so excited. And now I'm also figuring out like, oh, wow, like I have the time, space, and energy to plan some big things work-wise, but also personally. Like I can plan ahead now because I have a better idea of like where I'm going to be in July, which I am going to go to London. In June, I'm going to Africa. In April, I'm going to Japan. In August, I'm going to Scotland for a wedding. So I'm still traveling, but I have a home base now. And like, what is that going to look like? Like, I'm so excited.
Do you have one of those Jesse Itzler big ass calendars where you just like block everything off? Do you have one of those?
I do. I have it and it's hanging in my parents' house. And I didn't ask my mom before pinning it to her wall in her guest room. And it's funny. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. For anyone that doesn't know what he's talking about, it's like 3 feet by 2 feet. And it's
Huge.
Called the big ass calendar. I think mine says big class calendar. I should have bought the other one. But it's funny. When I was designing my office, I was like, do I want that calendar? And I decided not to.
Mhm.
One, sorry, Jesse Itzler. It's not the prettiest thing I've seen.
Yeah, that's true.
But I do have it for last year and it looks, oh my God, it's so cool. Now it's like a journal of my insane travel schedule from 2024. And so I'm so glad I bought it last year, but
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to buy it again.
You're not going to do it again? Yeah. You're like, I'm done. I'm done doing it. Yeah. I think what's new or what's coming up for you right now, Sarah? I know like we just talked about, and we're going to have to I want to get like a bunch of coaches and do a class one day, or not necessarily a class, but like we talk about like what's worked, what hasn't worked.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of this stuff in the coaching space has changed a lot, especially over the last year and last 2 years. And it's continuing to evolve more. And, you know, I want to do more of more retreats, like where we do a 2-day thing where we go through and do certain stuff. And like, I think you've been doing those. And again, these are like added layers of things that I think would be really beneficial for communities in the long run. And even promoting or what is that called?
Yep.
Cross promoting,
Yep.
or, you know, working with other people and doing multiple different things in other places. Like that's really what I'm doubling down on this year, and buying more property. Cause last year, like I didn't buy a whole lot. Like I didn't at all.
Yeah, I didn't buy anything last year. Well, I guess technically I closed on December 20th. So I did buy my house last year. But yeah, I plan on, as far as my future, I plan on buying a lot more rentals. I think being on the ground, like it's so fun driving the same neighborhood and being like, oh, that must be like a rental because of this. And so I do plan on picking up more properties and growing my personal portfolio this year, with a few things in mind. One is I have a great on the ground team. My agent that found me this house, her husband is my general contractor. And the three of us have actually done a few flips together. I was the private money lender. And so I got like the thrill and like the adrenaline of the flip, but without any of the stress.
Did you like that?
I loved it. I love being a private money lender. I love lending. And it's funny, again, I said I would never flip because it's a job, a job.
Right.
But I do see myself doing some flipping, where I'm not just the private money lender, but I'm actually, you know, flipping houses. I do see myself doing at least a flip. I love the renovation part. My dad has always worked for builders.
Mm-hmm.
So like my childhood was like walking, you know, framed houses and playing on dirt piles. And so through osmosis, I know a lot about houses, and I see myself doing a lot more of that. As far as the coaching, it is providing. So I have a good friend, his name's Davis, and he has a coaching business helping creators. And his tagline is results over revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that I was guilty of in 2022 was just really, because I'm so competitive with myself, was looking to people like you and Dr. Rachel and Brandon Turner and anyone that has a community and being like, oh, what's their revenue? What's their enrollment? How much does theirs cost? All these things. And what I realize is like, that doesn't matter at all if their students aren't getting results, because reputation is the most important thing. And then also, like, I want a coaching business. Yesterday's a great example. So I have one of my coaching, I have a year-long program, a 12-month membership program. And people join my program because they want to learn how to invest out of state. And they likely are interested in midterm rentals, but that's not the only thing I teach.
Right.
One of my students needed more. Like, she just wasn't hitting her goals fast enough. She's wildly ambitious and really struggles with routine. So I offered her to like bump her up into a one-on-one coaching. It's not something that I'm offering all the time. I don't want 12 one-on-one coaching clients. It's not what I want. But her, I saw, as when we talked about people that get it, like they have it, this girl has it. Yeah. And so for her, absolutely. So I had my one-on-one coaching call with her. Then I got an email from someone in the mentorship program, and it was so sweet. It was a forwarded email from an agent that had the offer memorandum. And she goes, hey, who should I hop on a call with to analyze? Like, who in the mentorship program, like what other peer or student? And I said, if you're available at 4:00, I'll do it. So was able to like hop on the call. I think we were on the call for 21 minutes, and she got exactly what she needed and was able to hop off. Then directly after that, I had one more one-on-one, because I now offer a quarterly one-on-one with everyone in the mentorship program. So everyone's at least getting one call with me.
Right.
He hopped on. He was having a major issue with a property that he had written an offer on that was multiple offer. I told him some things to do and to tweak. And by 5 p.m., he was under contract.
Wow.
And so like yesterday was the perfect example of what I want Sarah Weaver's mentorship program to look like. Is these people are getting results. I know their names. I know their kids' names. One of them just got engaged. I had the like time to ask her, like, tell me the engagement story. I'm a sap, Jesse. I don't know if you know this, but I cry at like birthday cards. So I was crying as she's telling me the engagement story. Yeah. And so that is my goal for my coaching program. Do I have monetary goals with it? Of course. but I care so deeply that my students are getting results that my revenue, I mean, I want to hit, half a million again, but I don't need to make 2 million because I also have little to no overhead. I haven't spent any money on ads. I have two VAs, and it really is just the three of us. Like I keep my overhead really low. And could I explode? Could I be doing, multiple six figures a month? I could. And maybe, not being nomadic, I'm going to have all this extra time on my hands and maybe I'll want to change. But right now, January 2025, I want to hit half a million again. And I want my students to get wild results. Like last year, my student, Paul, he joined, and within 3 months, he was under contract on a triplex. And within 5 months, he had closed on 6 units.
Yeah.
I joked that he was like my poster child for the mentorship program. And then he was meeting one-on-one with another student in the program. She went from 0 to 7 in about the same time frame. And I have another student who quit her job that she hated. Another student, her and her husband, they turned their primary in their house hack into an MTR, and they have been traveling the world through South America, Europe, and Asia for the last 9 months.
From the cash coming through?
From the cash flow, and then also just living with intention. Like they obviously were attracted to me. I think they followed me on Instagram. They were like, oh my gosh, you're living the life that we want. And I think we were able to shorten their timeline by about 7 months by just really focusing in on like, let's live with intention. And so that's my hope for the mentorship program, is that when people join, they don't have to know exactly what they want their life to look like, but they sure as hell will get a better idea. And then I'll hold their hand along the way. And I think that other coaching programs, when you get up to like, I mean, gosh, let's talk about somebody who has probably 30,000 students in his program. He's not able to like drop what he's doing and analyze a deal with someone at 4:00. And my students will tell you that that doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes they're like, can you analyze this deal? And I'm like, yeah. Richard, I'm like, no, I'm not available. But I want to know them on a deeper level. I think that that's what's really important to me. And that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. And not only that, but you actually like really care about your students.
Oh, yeah.
I think that this, the coaching space has become a slimy space, and it has been for years, that somebody can learn something, literally take your class, learn it, and go sell it, which you probably have had happen before. But
definitely.
That unique perspective and like not doing the thing for, years, like you don't get to get that. And not only that, but you have to care about people. Like I think if you don't have that actual innate quality that's built into you, it's going to be very hard for people to resonate and connect with you. And
I think anyone of character can snuff that out. I think that people can tell that. It's interesting. It's the feedback that I got. So I own a company, Aria Design Services, and we furnish Airbnbs and MTRs all over the country. That business partner, her biggest critique for me is she's like, you like people too much. She was like, you have to learn to be more critical, because I have a hard time seeing that person's taking advantage of me, or that they're not like coming to me with good intent, whereas she can see like good and bad from like a mile away. So I'm so glad she's my business partner in that company. But that's something that I really had to learn as I make myself more available and more, sharing more on the internet. I had to learn that like, I can't answer every DM. Like these people don't always have my best interests at heart. Like if they want to pick my brain, it's usually because exactly what you just said, they're going to take what I'm doing and try to do something else, which that doesn't bother me at all, because I'm abundance mindset. Like I think hundreds of thousands of people are going to learn from Jesse, and hundreds of thousands of people are going to learn from Sarah Weaver, and we're all going to make more money. And my hope is that in making more money, it makes you a better spouse, a better parent, a better neighbor, a better person, because I do think money helps create freedom, and freedom helps like breed kindness.
I totally agree to that. But there's also a flip side of that coin where people are going to think the exact opposite. And that's what drives me crazy. But you can't force somebody to think a different way. Like they have to be able to see the light for themselves. And that's the thing too, that just like you talked about earlier with some of your students that we both talked about it, they'll come in and they don't have that drive and energy, or they expect it because they buy something that it's just going to come to them. Like you got to do a bunch of work. Like it's not just going to like land on your lap. You have to do the work. And that's the part right there where it's just like, And it used to bother me, Sarah. I used to like have students when I first started, they would come in, like I just watched them like not really put all their energy in. This was like my course was like $800. It was super cheap back in the day. And I'm like, all you have to literally do is just follow these steps. And they're like, I don't know why I'm not getting results. I called 3 places. I'm like, what are you going to do with calling 3 places? Like that's like, but it used to drive me crazy. And I realized that I can't think that. I can't think like that. All I have to do is continue to, just like you said, have other people that have successes, watch what they're doing, have those folks talk to those people. They get to see what it feels like. But it's a powerful feeling when you have a community that's able to support each other like that. I feel like community, resources, education, and mentorship, those 4 things, I kind of coined it as the CREM method. That's what I've watched most people become the most successful is when they have those 4 elements some point in their life. In fact, I go to coaching. Like I still have a coach.
Yeah.
You probably have a coach.
And then I have a mastermind. There's 4 coaches that we meet every other week. And then I actually meet with another coach who frankly is probably a direct competitor if we really wanted to. And we meet every single week to talk about revenue, to talk about systems, onboarding. What's our virtual assistant doing? How are they doing?
Yeah.
Like I'm an open book when it comes to that stuff for the right people. So I am really grateful to Kendra, my partner with Aria, because I think before I was an open book with the wrong people. And now I have this incredible community around me of other entrepreneurs, both in and out of real estate that, guys, we're not reinventing the wheel by having a mentorship program or a mastermind or any of really even the co-hosting, like being a real estate investor. It's one of the many reasons I love real estate is people have been real estate, landlords and investors for hundreds of years. We're not reinventing the wheel. And so I think that we are so blessed to have people that we can ask questions to. And one of the things that I love is when a student joins my program and they're like, oh, that's it? Like that's all I have to do? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. Like, you're just in your head. That's what I think is what we're getting to earlier is when people are fearful. It's like you're all in your head. And that's why community is so important. So that the moments you do get in your head, you have somebody that can like reach out and pull you back in.
Bring you back down to real life. Sarah, where can folks find you at if they're looking to connect with you, if they're looking to join your program, if they're looking to learn more about what you have going on? Where would be the best places for them to see you? Maybe if you're going to be going around to certain events too, like where are you going to be at the next month?
Yeah. So if anyone's in Kansas City, let's have a little, meetup, a coffee real estate investor meetup in Kansas City. There's probably 5 of us. No. But yeah, the best place on the internet is sarahdweaver.com. And my Instagram is also Sarah D. Weaver. And if you listen to this or you're watching this and I said something that you want to comment on or you have a question, like please reach out. It's why Jesse and I do this. I think that I am where I am now is because I heard people doing what I wanted to do. And then I followed up with them and I'm like, hey, you mentioned this thing. I have a follow-up question. And so I'm really lucky. Like I said, I wasn't reinventing the wheel. So you don't have to either. Feel free to message me.
Yeah, I think that's what's really great about you and me and other people in the space. Like I read every comment that comes through on the YouTube channel and any comments that come through, and they're not always great, by the way.
No.
I have a lot of people that hate on me all the time, and it took me a while to get used to. In fact, I had a webinar the other day, and somebody in there, I was like talking about my dad's death and stuff because that was an important piece for me with like growing and development and all that stuff and business. And this guy's like, shut up already. We don't care about your dad. We just want to know how to do XYZ with midterm rentals. And I stopped the call and I was like, Sarah, listen to this. I was like, that is exactly the mentality of a person that I do not want in this call. In fact, that when somebody puts out negative, and what he said afterwards is like, all you're going to do is sell us your program. And I was like, Target. He had a screen on and there was a Pepsi bottle on the side of his computer. And I was like, you're being sold by Pepsi literally every day for hours a day. If you go on Netflix, if you're on anything, you're sold. There's billboards of everything everywhere. Of course, I'm going to be talking about selling my program. That's what I do. And then I also brought it to the point that where, the negative mindset that people have, that's exactly what's going to keep them where they are. Like they're never going to get past the Sarah's able to do this. I can't do it. Who cares about Jesse's dad that died? And like, that frame of mind is always going to keep somebody where they are. And I always think like sometimes in my brain, I'm like, is that a competitor of mine like going on here to like mess with me as I'm doing this? But that's my scarcity mindset. I used to be so worried about like something being stolen. And like, I remember I had somebody finally pull me aside and just be like, dude, you need to knock that off. This was years ago. Like, had somebody reach out to me and just be like, dude, you got to nobody's going to steal your stuff. And if they do, they are not going to know it like you do. And
because they're not Jesse. I mean,
exactly.
So many people love working with you and coming to your summit and learning from you because you are who you are.
Right.
And the same with me, they might be attracted to another coach because they, have a husband and kids and a high paying job, and they were able to juggle real estate with all of those things pulling at them. Whereas I have people that come to me because they wanted to be nomadic, or they do have some of those things. And later in life, they want to travel more, or they wanted to do out of state investing, or they just simply like our personalities. There's something about us that is going to attract our students. And then there's something about us that is going to repel people. And like you said, those aren't our people.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah. And I'm learning that more and more now as I continue to evolve and go through things, because this business can be harsh. People are freaking mean, dude.
People are mean.
They are super mean, and you have to have a thick skin putting yourself out on the internet or doing anything in general. But I think we get to see the best sides of people when they are, exactly what you just said, students that are, buying all these properties and, feeling stuck, and all of a sudden you'll talk to them, or they'll talk to somebody else in the community, and they will continue to push themselves forward. And it's just cool talking to people that actually really care about their students. So folks, you've heard it all from Sarah. She's no longer a nomad. She's not nomadic anymore. She's going to be putting some roots down in Kansas City for how long? We don't know yet. I have a feeling you're going to be there for a while. But Sarah, I appreciate you so much for hanging out with me. And everybody listening to this, leave a comment down below. Let us know if you think Sarah should continue to travel. She's not going to care what you say anyway, and maybe she will, as long as it's not a bad comment. And yeah, let us know what you guys think of this episode. Sarah, I appreciate you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure connecting with you. You are an extremely kind person. It comes off very easily, even through a screen, which is awesome.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you for listening to the JV podcast. I'm Jesse Vasquez, your host. I appreciate you for listening. And if you could do me a huge solid, go like and subscribe to this. This helps us tremendously. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful rest of your day.